Oh, I was muted. Welcome, friends. Mhm. Enemies, kind mothers. Today we're gonna talk about what is the truth. The truth that may set us free. Mm. Ah. Mm. Time. Mm. Oh boy. Mm. Wow. Great. And I got an email with some important information. Yes. Oh. 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 Hmm. Let's see. Oh. 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 No. Stay. You're back. Yes. Oh. Now, yeah. Saturdays. Saturday evenings. Oh. 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 All right. Let's flip over to back to Zoom. Okay, yeah, copied and pasted some information from let me do that pasting on my simple note. Simple note. Simple note. Log into my simple note and save it there too. That way I have access to it everywhere. Right. Normal teachings. Yeah. What's wrong with this? Mm, shit. What the heck is going on with this? Can't edit. Let's see. If I go like this. New note. Paste. What's going on? again. Yeah, maybe hit it several times. But paste it several times. Oh, shit. Look at that. This is weird. Let's see. Llama Glam. Who like this? Ah, sorry about that. I was reading about Simple Note. I was trying to go into the help, figure out. I'm having trouble copying and pasting and editing. It wasn't responding well. I'm using the browser. You have to download Simple Note, the app. Probably not simple. I do have the app. Login. Login. Simple. Um, email. Did I change my email? Maybe. No. I can edit it better. Oh, no. Better. Hmm. Wait, what happened? No, it's not responding. Confused. Mhm. Oh, very. All right, I'm back. Hmm. See, is anybody coming in? Oh, ah, must be raining. That's good. I'm still here. Okay, okay. Hello, friends, enemies, kind mothers. Thank you for joining us for another Saturday morning. Wake up and think clearly. This morning's topic is, what is the truth? Hmm. Soon we'll be joined by Wisdom Pino and who else? And oh, Mike. And Mike. Mike! How are you? You're in. Can you see us? Can you hear us? You're muted, I think. Now your your microphone is unmuted. Say something. Welcome. Mike.
Hello there.
Oh, you're what a pleasant surprise. Wow. You have a wide angle view of, or I have, of you in your living room. Or
But I can cut it down.
now you have a narrow view. Or you you approach the camera. Welcome to Wake Up and Think Clearly. Wow, how did you manage to wake up so early? Oh, you.
Well, I don't often do it because I tend to wind up going to bed at 11 or 12. So 7 o'clock is an hour when I am rarely up. Besides which, when I get up in the morning, most of the time in Florida, my tendency is to go out early and spend the time walking for a while.
Oh no, I ruined your morning walk.
Well,
What?
no, the weather is changing now. So today is one of those days when I'm going to feel all right going out later in the day.
Hmm. Oh, so you can walk afterwards around
Hmm.
around 8:30 or 9. You can go out and walk. Go to Panera? No.
Well, I could. Panera's is a 5 minute walk from me. Um, Although what I prefer to do is I live close to the Crosby Wellness Center, and they
Hmm.
have a little cafe over there. And a lot of the time, I like to walk over and take some coffee and sit at a table, use my laptop, and work for a while.
Oh, what is that?
A cat.
It's
It's
a
a spritzer.
white tiger. It's huge. It's scary. Look at those ears. It's gonna swallow me whole.
Yeah, he is
Wow.
a white cat with blue eyes and
Wow.
little splashes of gold on him. My understanding is that his mother was royalty, Siamese, and his father was a traveling man.
Oh, so if it was Siamese, it lost its black ears and black nose.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's unusual.
Yeah.
Wow, when did you acquire that cat?
Oh, years ago. He is, I believe, 19 at this point.
Wow,
Quite old for a cat,
wow,
although some do live into their 20s.
wow. How's his health?
Um, eh, Not that great. He has um, liver and thyroid failure. He's on a
Wow.
special diet, but most of the time he seems reasonably happy.
Wow. Mm,
So
mm.
long as I
Good
can keep
company.
him reasonably happy, then that's the important thing.
Do you take him out for a walk?
No, he's a house cat. And I'm not sure his vision is very good at this point.
Wow.
So taking him out would not be good. Besides, we live in a condo complex. So I'm not sure I want him wandering around.
Joel, but you can call me Joe, has entered the waiting room. I'll admit him. He's from Toronto. He appears in 52 Living Ideas meetings. Well, welcome, Joel, but you can call me Joe.
Good morning, Hiro. Hello, Mike. I don't think we've met before.
Joel, good meeting you.
Where is everybody? Are you guys all in Florida?
Yes,
You're on the infected coast or the uninfected coast?
Yes.
In the middle.
You're in the middle, really?
Yes.
Central Florida.
Yeah. Okay. So how is the infection rate there? I understand it's not quite as bad as the Atlantic coast.
I don't
I
know.
can't tell you, but I understand Orlando has a high infection rate.
Okay.
It's rising, I guess. Mm. And maybe it'll start rising in a few days after this Thanksgiving. It'll start going up.
Yeah, like a rocket. Listen, if you guys just have a minute before we finish discovering what truth is, I'd like to go get a coffee. So I'll excuse myself. So save all the juicy bits for a few minutes because I don't want to miss anything for going to get a coffee.
We'll talk about lies.
Trivial things for a few minutes.
Trivia. Did you hear about Trump? Did you hear that they've been recounting Wisconsin and they finished one county and it cost $300 million to recount so far. And it turned out that it gave Biden another 100 extra votes or something.
Well, I think it's wonderful for Trump to be so selfless, spending government money, boosting Biden's vote.
I don't know if it cost the government. Maybe he had to pay for it. But that's nice of. I don't know.
Perhaps we should suggest that since Trump is so wealthy, he should pay half for all of the recounts.
Half for all of the recounts.
Yes.
I don't know if he had to pay for the recounts. I mean, it sounded like he did have to pay for it. He had to pay $3 million for a recount in Wisconsin. So far, it's cost $3 million. That that comes up to be $300,000 per vote that he lost. He lost 100 votes to Biden after the recount.
It cost a lot more to buy votes than it used to.
It's Luis Del Pino. Luis Del Pino from Claremont, from Montverde.
Good morning.
Welcome, Luis Del Pino.
Jairo Moreno, how are you?
We're
Oh.
in for a special treat. We have special guest Mike from Central Winter Park.
Wow. How you doing, Mike?
Fine. How you doing?
Doing very good. Nice. Very pleased to meet you.
And his 19-year-old semi-Siamese cat with blue eyes.
19.
19.
That's a very ripe age for a cat. Holy
well, it's
moly.
not so bad for a Zen master, and I'm convinced he is.
Well, it must be very peaceful to live with a Zen master.
Yes.
Well, Mike, how did you bump onto this Zoom meeting that has been going on for a little while? Are you friends with Jairo? How did we become?
I've known Cairo for years.
Oh,
I haven't come to this meeting before at 7 because 7 a.m. is on Saturday is generally inconvenient for me.
I understand. I understand. Well, I do know Jairo from way back then too.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jairo and I met sometime in 2008, maybe. Jairo, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Sounds right.
Yeah, 2008. So we go back a long ways, and all our conversations are always talking about the same thing, no thing.
Okay.
The
Is
nature,
this much ado about nothing?
something like that. Yes, yes. We, I think we both have that perspective on what it is to be and not to be. We always talk about different views of what it is to be thinking, what is human consciousness, what is the nature of reality, all these uh, metaphysical questions about, life, instead of just talking about politics or the
Psychology
economy,
too.
psychology. Well, psychology is important because, reality looks at itself through a mind, at least in the human case. And of course, if the mind doesn't understand well, the reality doesn't have a good chance at looking at itself clearly. So
And
psychology is very important.
narcissism.
Very good.
Oh,
Yes,
we touched on
that's
that one last time or a few weeks
yes.
ago.
But
But that's interesting.
Mike, every time there is a new attendee, I'm extremely curious. So maybe you can give us a little bit of background
Mike was
about you.
a mathematics professor at UCF. I heard him say,
Wow, that already
One
that
time.
that that already makes it interesting.
and
Uh,
he's a science fiction writer.
uh, Even better. So mathematics, higher mathematics.
Yes.
Mm.
I follow as much as I can uh, the great mathematicians. Um, I'm not a mathematician myself, but I think I can have an intuition of what it is to be a great mathematician.
Well,
And
I certainly don't claim to be a great mathematician.
but you can follow them. You know what they're talking about.
I can work out generally what they're saying if I devote enough time and effort.
Yes,
I've
yes.
gotten far enough to do that.
I understand. It's a language, just like the human language. Math, mathematics are a language of description, a very, very precise description of reality.
And
Uh,
we had a meeting.
Description of something.
yes, something and nothing. As a matter of fact, mathematics and physics have had to go into some kind of a marriage in trying to describe, because you can describe the reality at our level, at our dimension, let's say, and then you can describe the mathematics of the very big, cosmology, uh, infinity, and then you can describe reality in the very, very small, which would be the quantum world, the fabric uh, of which everything is made of, and become because reality becomes so counterintuitive. it, it is so weird as compared to our normal practical life at our human level. Um, Mathematics have had to become extremely subtle and abstract. Um, and it's a thing of beauty because the language of mathematics follows the simplicity and complexity at the same time, the whimsical, incredible, I don't know how to describe the nature of reality, and has become extremely subtle, almost metaphysical. So I have a great admiration for whoever undertakes to
Darwin.
build a language around the description of everything and nothing at the same time.
Uh, uh, Mike and Rami and I had a wonderful meeting on Zoom eh, on the logic of Charles S. Peirce, Peirce. Logic. Mm, we
So,
didn't get too far
Mike, you do not
in it.
deal with mathematics anymore, other than thinking about them, if you ever think about them anymore. Now you are retired, I would assume.
I'm retired. I still do a small amount of mathematics. I've recently finished putting together a book in a particular area of mathematics that I would like to put out because I think it has material in it that ought to be pushed out to certain people in the world. But I find I have only so much time and energy, and I am tending to concentrate much more on doing on fiction writing
Huh.
mainly, and to a certain extent looking at philosophy.
Interesting. Now,
Mm,
what sorts of mathematics would you like to push out there? What can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's something called geometric algebra and geometric calculus.
Okay.
And it is extremely useful in doing what is called multivariable analysis or multivariable calculus or calculus on manifolds. That
Manifolds,
is,
yes.
spaces which are uh, not necessarily Euclidean spaces, but in some sense twisted and curved.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a
So,
French school of mathematicians uh, that deal a lot with the sorts of mathematics and algebraic geometry. They were very big in the 60s and 50s. Um, I don't remember half their names, but I think that is the kind of mathematics they were trying to push out there.
algebraic geometry is something else.
Oh,
You know, there's a huge number of what you might call genres in mathematics. And
different flavors.
sometimes it gets hard to find names for them. You grow so many branches on the tree.
Yes, 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 yes.
but it's considered part of calculus or algebra or geometry or it's hard to.
Well, it has a very geometric flavor to it. That's one of the reasons I became attracted to it, because uh, it permits you to think about things of a geometric nature and begin to form some images of some of the things that happen in mathematics, which can be very helpful if you're trying to understand a particular piece of mathematics or apply it.
And the geometry is in 3 dimensions.
It's in arbitrarily high dimensions.
Oh, wow. Let's say 25 dimensions.
Sure.
I thought there were up to 11 dimensions in describing. In the M theory, they talk about 11 dimensions. I don't know if they stopped there to
Yes,
make it easy on
that's
themselves.
M theory.
Yes.
Okay. But in mathematics, remember, as you said a while ago, quite nicely, mathematics in effect is language. Or to put it another way around, you can think of it as being an extension of human language to concepts which are not dealt with in everyday life.
That's right. That's right.
And one of the extensions is to just go way beyond 3 dimensions. And it's quite usual to work in spaces with an infinite number of
Infinite
dimensions.
dimensions, yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
In the symmetry, I
Mhm.
think gauge symmetry, they talk about that, where when you go very small, everything becomes symmetrical. So you could talk about an infinity of dimensions. So wherever you look, there's a dimension, and everything is so alike in a sense that there is no distinction, no duality. So if you look at something from an infinity of dimensions or perspectives, then you totally comprehend the reality as it is, the whole enchilada.
Well, mathematicians generally never talk about reality as it is. You
I
know,
have no, I
they
just
may
don't.
say this is Tuesday, so parallel lines don't meet. But if you come back on Wednesday, parallel lines will be meeting.
So
Wow.
that's my problem. I'm not a mathematician. I am a consciousness that tries to understand itself,
Yeah.
what it's made of. It has
Mhm.
come to the conclusion that it is not separate from the rest of everything.
Mhm.
And I just don't have any words to describe the whole, other than by calling it reality. And because everybody understands reality is what we all look at, the same
Right.
thing. We all look at the same tree. The tree is real. Uh, I don't look at a tree and you go, no, that's a car, unless we don't understand. We don't have the same words to describe the same object. So the object itself would be what I call reality. So I don't give it a weird name or metaphysical name. It's just reality, what is. And I try to understand myself in an endeavor to understand everything, because I have been able to establish that there's no essential difference between I and other. It's just a it's just
Yeah.
a, a, a mental distinction, a perception distinction, an
Yeah.
aspectual distinction.
But Mike, what do you think about Einstein and how he um, came up with thought experience experiments and I guess intuitively thought of things being relative or and then looked for the math to explain it. Did he at first kind of visualize it in his mind and then looked for the math to pin it down? Do you think is that a good way of saying it?
Well, I think that the way that he got to these ideas was very messy. And you probably cannot lay out a nice roadmap of how he did it. And I'm sure that images, little thought experiments and fantasies, if you will, played a great deal in were very important in his getting to these particular ideas. And somewhere along the line, um, as he was moving from special relativity theory and groping toward general relativity theory, he realized that he was going to need mathematical tools he did not have and was fortunately in contact with one or more mathematicians who knew something about some of the tools that were out there and led him toward tensor analysis.
Is tensor analysis sort of similar to what you've done, or is it kind of geometric?
Well, tensor analysis you can think of tensor analysis as being, in some sense, an approach to much the same sort of ideas that you run across in geometric algebra and geometric calculus. And certainly it dates farther back, although the way tensor analysis was developed, it is not at all as strong in terms of the kinds of geometric pictures and intuition you can form. And it gets tangled up a great deal more in performing calculations, in particular looking at things like indices and subscripts on certain expressions. It depends very much in terms of doing geometric problems or physical problems on setting up coordinate systems and doing elaborate calculations within coordinate systems and then coming out with the answers. Whereas the geometric calculus tends to stand outside the coordinate systems and deal with things which are coordinate independent. Although for individual applications, you often have to go back to the coordinates. Now, I don't know if that made any sense or not, but there it is.
So, Mike, you said something about your interest in philosophy lately.
Yes.
Why and how?
Well, I think that I had two different impetuses to get interested in philosophy. I have always been interested in science fiction, fantasy, strange things, fairy tales, mythology. I have, if you will, a taste for those things. One of the things I became aware of as I grew older, as I read here and there, was that there were all sorts of strange experiences that popped up that were considered to be not necessarily real, possibly delusional. Things like examples of precognition, near-death experiences, flying saucers, etc., etc. And I read a fair amount about some of these things. And I came to the conclusion after a while that although there was certainly a great deal of misinterpretation, deception, and self-deception involved in a number of these experiences, yet it looked to me as though there were a number of these experiences for which a good case could be made. Yet I knew at the same time this was material which was considered to be something that a well-balanced person would not entertain more than a few seconds. All right. Now, that was one of the things that led me. Another thing which led me was, as I say, I was interested, am still interested in science fiction and fantasy, though not in the same way as before. I remember reading marvelous stories that were often filled with optimism, which broadened my horizons. And sometimes they were not necessarily filled with optimism, but they did broaden my horizon. And this was not only in science fiction, this was in fantasy also. I remember reading with tremendous relish George MacDonald's Fantastes and Lilith. These were fantasies. He was a Scots preacher, and he wrote these fantasies, and they were a tremendous inspiration to C.S. Lewis. And I greatly enjoyed C.S. Lewis's material. And I felt there was something in there that was so wonderful and marvelous. Sometimes in the science fiction, more often in certain of the fantasies. And yet, when I went to see how we explained our world, what a good world view was, insofar as I understood philosophy and insofar as I understood science, I felt that there was none of this material, none of this lifting up that I had discovered in these other places. Are you with me?
Yep.
All right. So if you want to see a good statement of this, read Bertrand Russell's, I think it's something like The Religion of a Free Man or The Confession of a Free Man, where he talks about being an atheist and how the universe is this horrible, dark place. And yet, he vows he's going to continue as though it meant something, which I thought was absolutely an absurd statement on his part.
And yet it makes a lot of sense. Mike, let me ask you, have you read Colin Wilson?
Yeah, I've read Colin Wilson, but he's interesting. I read him for maybe colorful ideas.
Yeah.
But anyway, to continue just a little bit, I'm going to come to an end quickly, I think. These sorts of things started me to feel that maybe there was something that was missing from our understanding of science and philosophy. And I began to think that maybe what I ought to do was go and look at the underpinnings of science, which in turn led me to the question of, well, what is the philosophy that lies at the bottom of science? And what is philosophy like in general? And basically the conclusion I came to was that an educated person nowadays tends to take some version of materialism as being the necessary foundation of all knowledge. And this attitude is such that it is almost never reflected on. It is just taught and almost unconsciously assumed. So one of the questions I got to was, well, what are the alternatives? And how does materialism operate, and how do the alternatives operate? So basically, that's my answer to your question.
Excellent. I think we are all in here looking at these topics, these notions. We're trying to, I guess we're trying to make sense of what it is, what we call being. We're trying to understand reality. how it works. And in a sense, we're trying to go beyond the limits or boundaries established by the pure materialism. And
I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to figure out when we're going to get the vaccine in Canada.
David, what
good
do you
morning.
think?
Good morning, Joe.
What do you think, David?
Well, I go back to what I said last week about knowledge and understanding. Does anybody remember that? Knowledge is, the things that we're all taught on the surface, and understanding is actually experiencing that knowledge in our own lives. And the thing is, sometimes, like I heard Louise talking there earlier about identifying a tree. Well, the thing is, each person will look at a tree in a different way because of the fact that they have a different relationship in life with the tree. Even though we may see the same tree, our understandings will be different according to the way that we have had a relationship in life, with that tree. I mean, the same is true with the thing is all things that I think that we actually come to understand and know in our life. Just like Mike has a background of mathematics. And, I think we were talking about that last week. And, the thing is, math is something that he knows in his language and his understanding in many, many different ways. And he starts talking about it. And unless you know his language, you have no idea what in the world he's talking about. And the same is with many other different areas of life, like computer programming or whatever. But once you take and experience it and it becomes part of your life, then you have a different observation and a different understanding and actually different wisdom of whatever it is that you're involved in, So, to me, the thing is, it'd really be nice for everybody to take and try to think the same, in which we do to a degree of identifying different objects. They become part of our outside knowledge. But the thing is, we all experience life and we all experience all these different objects and materialism in a different way. That's why sometimes I think that, like in general, Stoicism, takes a different look upon how people actually look at life, period. And you can see it from its foundation, how it was originated, until today, compared to most people just jump in the ring of what everybody else is doing and accept what everybody else does and accepts their definition and presumes their definition. But a Stoic looks at things in a much different way than is commonly looked at. So, I'm just mumbling on. So,
Well, I
So,
think your
David,
distinction, I
what?
think your distinction between knowing and understanding is a very useful one. And I think that's the way a lot of things work. I know we constantly have something like that goes on when we are doing mathematics. In mathematics, we have very often extremely abstract concepts, definitions that are given to us. And a seasoned mathematician, when he is given the definition of, let us say, a hemi-demi-cycloid, will immediately rush out and look for an example of it that he can pick up and touch with his hands or draw a picture of, because he knows that he has to move from an abstract knowledge of this concept to something which is more intuitive, to an understanding of this whatever it is that he's dealing with. I've noticed a similar thing, for example, in doing mathematics, when we talk about theory of transfinite numbers. Okay, it turns out that there are certain kinds of transfinite numbers which occur in particular examples over and over again. And one can either give a definition of this concept or look at those examples and, by golly, begin to develop a primitive, modest intuition and feeling for what that means.
What's an example of a transfinite number?
Okay. By the way, here, what's an example of a transfinite number? All right, think of it this way. Suppose I look at the set which contains the letters A, B, and C, and then I look at another set which contains the numbers 5, 7, and 9. Those are two sets which contain three objects. They are said to have the same cardinal number because you can put the sets in a one-to-one correspondence. You can pair the objects in the sets, one with another. If you look at certain infinite sets, suppose you look at the set that contains the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on forever and ever and ever, all positive whole numbers. That's an infinite set. Suppose you look at the set that contains only the even numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on, forever and ever. Even whole numbers. Those are two different sets. Each of them has a cardinal number. And it turns out, if you look at the two sets, you can place them in a one-to-one correspondence, one with another, and you then say, aha, they have the same cardinal number, and since they are infinite sets, that is a transfinite cardinal.
Transfinite.
Yes.
So, Mike, isn't that the same as a binary mathematical system?
No, not necessarily.
How's it
I'm not
different?
sure what you mean by a binary.
Okay, binary means using zeros and ones like they used to develop the computer operating systems.
Well, that's just a way of representing numbers.
Well, isn't that what you're doing though with what you just come up with?
No, I'm doing something completely different.
How?
If I look, for example, at the number 2 and I write it in binary notation, I write 1, 0.
Yeah.
Okay. If I look at the number 3, I write it as 1, 1 in binary notation. I'm using a different kind of notation to represent the numbers.
Oh, okay. So that's what that is now. How about the hexadecimal system? I mean, which they use numbers and, letters.
Again, that's a way of representing numbers. Basically, if you go from decimal to binary to hexadecimal or whatever, you're simply switching languages, ways that you write things down, or alphabets, if you please.
So then what you're saying, isn't that a language within itself?
Yeah, it's a language to deal with certain properties of the
Then
universe.
what do they use that for?
Well, they use that, I think, if you talk about binaries, on the one
Well, I'm
hand,
talking about your numbers, the numbers that you're using that you were explaining, like the A, B, and C,
Oh,
4, 5, and 6. I mean, and then, assigning values.
transfinite cardinal numbers.
Yeah.
Now, those are not going to be used on a computer, okay? Those don't have the same sorts of applications. If they have applications, they tend to be theoretical applications.
Okay.
Okay. They can be, I can think of at least one instance where you can use some of these ideas to prove that certain equations have solutions. You can give an existence proof using these ideas without necessarily actually exhibiting a solution.
Yeah, but that would be
Uh,
a theoretical solution then too, right?
Yes. Yeah. See,
have
the way that you use these things tends to be uh, of a theoretical nature.
Right.
have you heard about the hotel that has an infinite number of rooms, but it's full and you
Yes.
can't get a room? So what you tell the clerk is, well, why don't you move the person that's in the first room over to the second room? But before that, move the person that is in the second room to the third room. But before that, move the person that is in the third room to the fourth room. But before that, and so on forever. And then you'll have the first room available for me. So couldn't you
Yes.
do that?
No, because it would drive the maid crazy. It's not
Yeah,
practical,
this
Ira.
is spelled out in a book by George Gamow called 1, 2, 3 Infinity. Gamow was a Nobel Prize winning physicist who fled from Russia to the United States back before the Second World War. And he does a nice job of describing that. But that hotel business, you know, I talked about the set of natural numbers, that is positive whole numbers, as being a transfinite set. The name for the cardinal number associated with that transfinite set is Aleph naught. Okay, Aleph being Hebrew letter. And the hotel business that you described, in effect, is saying that Aleph naught minus 1 is Aleph naught. So that transfinite numbers behave in very strange ways.
and and in Buddhism, there's the idea that there's infinite time in both directions. So going into the future is infinite, and going to the past is infinitely, like there's no beginning and there's no end, and then there's also no beginning or end to our life. So we're our actual self, although there's, so well, bear with me, but see, so let's say that there's a finite number of sentient beings, and so that means that there's a point where there's no more beings, but there's an infinite amount of time, and we've been taking rebirth in infinite forever, since beginning less time. So that means that we could have been our mother. We could have, if there's enough lives in the past, Mike could have been my mother. Luis Del Pino could have been my mother. Darwin and even Joel could have been my mother. And but of course my mother is sleeping right here. That's my biological mother in this life. So in each life we've had a mother, well, at least for mammals maybe, and that mother has been very kind to us and nurtured us, and so we owe a great debt to our mother. So the idea of developing boundless compassion is to view all beings with two eyes, as have been our kind mother in a previous life. So thank you, kind mothers, for what you've done. So that's why I start off with these meetings saying, hello, friends, enemies, and kind mothers, because everyone could be my friend, but they could end up later on being my enemy. So I should be kind to my enemies also.
I just want to be clear, Hyro. I was never your mother.
What? Of
I
course
might
you
I
have.
might be sometimes, but I have been called a mother, but I am not your mother, or nor have I ever been in any previously known life or in any transfinite set.
Mm.
And there
Oh.
are some uncomfortable mothers who will tell their sons, you owe me a transfinite debt.
Yes, we're indebted. We are indebted to one another. What do you think, David?
That we're indebted to one another?
Isn't that a good concept to have?
Well, I know the thing is, if I get a loan from the bank, I'm indebted to the bank for the money that I took from them. But indebted to one another, I don't know that that is exactly right. I never really thought about that much. The thing is, I think we have a responsibility to live in this world, to take and try to do the best we can, number one, for ourselves. And if we do good for ourselves, the people around us will also benefit, from our morality, or they don't benefit from our immorality. So, it depends upon the individual. Just like you have a philosophy there of, looks like being born again into many different lives, which sort of goes down the line of, what was it? L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics, because they sort of believe that same thing too. And myself, I've never experienced that or had that experience, or, naturally the thought has run through my mind, but there's never been any verification of that. And I don't feel it's necessary to take and pursue that, because once I die, I really don't know what happens, and I'll be the first to admit it. So I don't get caught up into what's going to be in the future. I have a hard enough time understanding what's happening now in the present, to make decisions upon things that I'm going to do today and tomorrow, let alone worry about something that's going to happen that I have no idea of what is. So to me, it's a waste of time, of my time, to even think about this sort of thing. I'd much rather, be more concerned about the coffee I drink, or the movie I see, or, being nice to my wife, or whatever, even when she's pissed off at me, or, intimidates me, or vice versa. It's things I have to deal with in this real life. So as far as having a debt to others, first I have to figure out the debts that I have, and pay them off, and make restitution, and do what I have to do to live my life. So that's I'm a very much an individualist. But the thing is, our lives now with coronavirus, it's all about people that we may have come in contact with, that they may have come in contact, and worrying about things that totally don't exist. Like I say, the coronavirus, my wife's had it, and I believe I've had it. And it's just something that you got to deal with. Period. Can't run from it. So that's the way I look at life.
So what kind of philosophy is that called?
Individualism.
Individualist?
Yep. Yep.
And
Individualism. You take and you look and you try to study and learn. It's even there's a philosophy. There's philosophy about individualism too. So, the thing is, it's different than collectivism, which is taken and you live in your life, that you take and have to take and collectively do everything for the collective instead of for the individual. So that's what the war is all about right now in the United States. It's going on within our psychology, I guess, within our government, within our policies, within everything. You're going to take and have your choice to take and eat a hamburger or a hot dog, or you're going to take and be forced to eat a can of beans, by others, by the collective.
What do you think, Mike? You said that you suspect that the current paradigm, the current scientific paradigm, could be described as materialist to the max. So therefore, consciousness is a emergent property of the neural network of the brain. But what are the alternatives? What about this one? The self-aware universe. How consciousness actually created the material world.
I may be mistaken, Hyro, but I don't believe Mike said that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I thought you were saying that there seems to be an underlying premise among educated people that there is, shall we call it, a primary assumption that the physical world exists and material events matter in supremacy to all other experiences. Is that a fair, did I understand what you said to a certain extent?
Yes. Yeah, I think that that would be a good way to put it. And you will even find a number of instances of people who are well-educated people who accept this, who at the same time will belong to some church or synagogue, etc., and will accept the teachings of that institution without necessarily paying too much attention to the contradictions which exist between the worldviews.
Right. Yeah, I see that. But isn't this encapsulated in the quotation that I posted in the chat? I'll post it again, and I'll just read it for a second. The human mind, at its present stage of development, cannot function without the aid of fictions, but neither can it function without the aid of facts, save perhaps when it is housed in the skull of a university professor of philosophy.
Mm. Or a math professor.
Well, no, he goes on, he talks about math as being a metaphysical field, which at first blush struck me because of my lack of in-depth understanding of mathematics as being, quite contrary to my understandings. But now, having listened to Mike for a bit, it makes more sense. So the original author clearly had a better understanding of these things than I did.
Who's the author?
It's a famous American journalist, a guy by the name of H.L. Mencken. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And when we were discussing him at another meeting, I was searching for another quote of his that I've often used, and I came across this one as well.
Yeah, but Joel, isn't with what you're saying, when you're talking about facts, I mean, the thing is, everybody's facts are sort of different as to what their understanding of life is. So the thing is, something can be factual to one person, but if another person doesn't understand the facts in the same theoretical ideal that the person that is creating that makes, it won't be factual. So the thing is, what may be factual to one may not be factual to somebody else.
Well, maybe I'm wrong about this, David, because I haven't thoroughly studied Nortonian philosophy. But what you're calling a fact, I would think of as a belief. So,
yeah, right. Well, facts to you in your life are your own beliefs. I mean, it is really sort of a synonym to that. The thing is, it depends upon how the person would observe the facts, because to accept something as fact, like Mike was proposing here before, theories, which a theory is totally different than a fact. And a fact may be true because one person sees it, and several people may see the same fact as true and have experienced it. But when you bring it to someone that has no idea what you're talking about, the fact, even though it's a fact to you and the people that have experienced it, it will not be a fact to them.
Well, David, I think we may be conflating the words fact and belief in our respective lexicons, our vocabulary. So I take as a fact a thing that in discourse people can agree to. I take it as a fact that Mike is a unitary human being, I believe, sitting at a computer. I mean, I may be misled. He may be a computer generated image. I accept that there's a lot of other possibilities, but on the balance of probability, and according to Charles Peirce, pragmatically speaking, I take him to be what he says he is. And having listened to him describe mathematics, I take it on belief, and I feel confident in my belief that he has an understanding of mathematics, certainly well beyond my own. It could be all a bunch of gobbledygook that you could sell to an uneducated person like me, but just looking at him and hearing his mannerisms, I think he's a real human being. He's one human being, and maybe he's many human beings, I don't know. Just as I think, so on a practical level, there are some things that I think we can commonly accept as facts. And when we want to expand that to more generalized rules of life and experience, we then are getting into more what I consider the world of belief. So you may think that the implications of this are more far reaching than I do. I mean, I feel that it's worth my time to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, even if it's just to say hello to Jairo and Dr. Del Pino and to hear about your experience as entomology. And been a great treat for me to hear Mike today.
Right.
But I don't claim that's a fact for anybody else in the room. I don't know if Mike will ever come back again.
Right. I think that's a good point, because I agree with your facts of outlining your ideals of Mike, and believe that my personal belief is that those facts outlines Mike in a very, very good way.
But then there's beliefs or opinions that could be formed by what you've heard from Mike. You could have develop a bad opinion or belief about him, or a good opinion. So there's a broad range and in
Or you
all
could just take,
dimensions.
or you could just take and accept Mike as what Mike said and what Joel said about Mike,
Oh,
and say, hey, that's the way
an
that.
unbiased view of Mike.
Yeah, right. Why do you have to take a side? Why do you have
Oh,
to say, well, this is good or that's bad? I mean, the
or
thing is, some of the stuff that Mike talks about, I have no idea what he's
extremes
talking
and
about.
shoot the
But knowing
middle.
Mike over years, I know he's very knowledgeable in what he does understand.
Well,
But
what you're talking about is stoic reputation. And that's something that, like, I have no control over what your opinion of me is, which forms reputation, just as Mike has no control over my opinion of him, which is in part his reputation in the world. But my observation of how he conducts himself in discussions, how he explains things, his generosity of spirit that I observe in dealing with my ignorance on certain subjects, tells me he's relatively good-natured, but I could be mistaken. Jairo, I have experience of in different groups. So I've seen Jairo in New York meetups, and I think Seattle philosophy meetups. So I have a different reputational opinion of Jairo as he has of me, whereas you have only seen me in this context. And in fact, today you haven't even seen me.
Yes, that leads to what is the truth? The topic of today's meeting, because there's facts and there's beliefs, and you could put that on a spectrum, with facts being trivial and obvious. Like, you want to know how tall Mike is, then you put them against the wall and measure in inches, and you could come out with a fact, right?
Yeah, but why would I want to know how tall Mike is?
To compare.
You'd want to know where to aim the rifle.
And then,
Guys, I just want, I'm running out of time, unfortunately. I always say that I could do this for another 5 or 6 days in a row.
you gotta chop
I
wood.
enjoyed very much. Yeah, I have stuff to do. But Mike, I wanted to thank you for joining the Saturday Zoom. I sincerely hope that you come back to it. You started the conversation talking about the myth, fantasy, and the paranormal, and coming from a mathematician that already struck a chord, because since it looks like you are going beyond mathematics to try to make sense, philosophize about the reality, and to me that's exactly the the crux of the matter, how a consciousness understands itself and the rest of reality. And it goes beyond a science and uses another one. That's what Wilson, E.O. Wilson, calls consilience, which means to look at a specific concept, idea, or notion, or understanding from a myriad of different perspectives and sciences, looking at reality from mathematics, from physics, from anatomy, from nutrition, from psychology, from philosophy, etc., etc. So the fact that you are interested in fiction, myth, fantasy, and you have a mathematical background, to me is very, very interesting. So I wanted to delve into that, dig in.
And you learned today about transfinite numbers or something like that, right?
Transfinite sets, I think. Was it
And
transfinite sets or numbers?
Aleph not.
Yes, and keep this concept in mind next time you go on a long trip, because you can sing the beer song, "There are Aleph not bottles of beer on the wall." Take one down, drink it all up. There are Aleph not bottles of beer on the wall.
It sounds
Indeed.
like mathematician's humor.
Yes.
Aleph not -1 or +1.
Oh, -1 makes no difference.
All right, gentlemen, I have
Good
to go.
meeting.
Always a pleasure. Nice meeting you
We
too. I
will
hope to see you
continue
next Saturday for
pondering
sure. I am definitely going to read this
what is
George
the
MacDonald,
truth.
Fantastis.
Fantastes.
So
Thank you, Luis.
Okie dokie.
Bye.
All right, take care, guys. See you next
Okay.
Saturday.
What do you
We'll
think,
see you.
Joel?
Mike, this is the first time you've been to this meetup?
Yes.
I don't know why, but I thought
7 a.m. 7 a.m. is just doesn't fit as a general rule with the way my life works.
Uh-huh.
where
And-
would you normally be at 7 a.m.?
In bed.
Okay, still sleeping.
What do you think, Joel? That the human mind cannot function without the aid of fiction? Does that include like novels or movies or stories? And yet it cannot function without the aid of facts. Like I guess when we're walking in the room, we're using facts, or otherwise we would run into things, visual facts. Well, unless we're hallucinating or something, or we have bad vision, we have poor facts or inaccuracies.
Well, we might have inaccuracies in that particular sensory input, which we may compensate for with other sensory inputs. My white cane may prevent me from banging into things, even though I'm not using visual inputs. I'm able to navigate the physical world. But I think what that is saying is the same or similar to what Mike was saying about, very accomplished professors who still attend their churches and synagogues and mosques and what have you. That's the kind of fiction that the human mind needs, either to obtain community with other people, even people with whom they don't intellectually occupy the same plane, or for some innate need of affiliation that we as beings have.
Or stories, fictions are stories or myths that come with morals that help in decision making. Like even if the story is about an evil person, then maybe the moral of the story is I hope not to become an evil person.
The thing, I look at it a different way. Let's see, I wrote if I experience something during my daily activities and I have a story to tell, and I tell the story, okay, whatever it may be, it is fact for me of what I observed during that event, okay? But the thing is, if you hear that story, it is only fiction to you because you didn't actually experience that event. It's sort of like a lot of these mythological tales. I love the Greek mythological tales, especially like the one between Narcissus and Echo, which you did a thing on a couple of weeks ago. The thing is, it is not real to me because I was not there, but the story tells of a reality that exists in life. Now, the actual event of that story of Narcissus and Echo may have existed, or it may just be a fictional story. But the thing is, inside of the fictional story itself tells a morality that can be observed in many, many, many different ways. And I think that there is the beauty of really, really good fiction, because the thing is, the difference between fiction and reality sometimes is not. But the only thing is, with fiction, a person can take and pull from what their own life experiences are, okay, and relate it to that fictional event, And to me, that's why, personally, I find that Jesus Christ and the stories that he does in the Gospels are so revealing, because their applications are so complex in their own ways. Whether it really happened or not, I don't know. But the only thing is, I do know, is that when you start to begin to examine the parables, which are, could be totally fiction, they say many, many, many different things to our morality.
That Narcissus and Echo is an interesting story, but what is the moral of it? Is it like saying that we don't want to be narcissistic and we don't want to be egoistic? We don't want to be always repeating what others are saying without thinking about it, and we don't want to be narcissistic by not ignoring others and just focusing on ourselves. Is that a rough idea?
Well, the thing is, I think everybody is going to gather what they will out of that story. But for me, the story of Narcissus and Echo reveals more of a situation where I become so focused on different things that I don't even see what's beyond me. Because that there is what ended up with Narcissus when he looked into the pool, and the only thing he could see himself and admire himself and the things that he does. I think that this is a common thing that happens to each of us, especially I know it happens to myself, and that when I'm trying to take and understand something beyond myself becomes my own stumbling block, because of the things that I actually do believe. And for example, like Echo, when she would repeat everything that Narcissus said to him, okay, that there I find that I've done the same thing too, because from a small child, I learned to repeat what is I'm taught from my elders, from my parents to the teachers or whatever it may be, and that there becomes my own narcissism.
Or it becomes your programming. Those
Same thing, yeah.
keep echoing in you.
Right, that's right. It does. It echoes, and it becomes sort of like, as Napoleon Hill calls it a hypnotic rhythm, where the thing is, I become repetitive of only the things that I know of in the past, which is something that everybody does. It's not. I'm not saying that's bad or good, but it's something that does exist and does happen, and depending upon. Like Mike, he becomes repetitive in his mathematics and everything that he learns. So he can respond immediately to a word or an ideal or an event that he's familiar with. And the same is true with you in your life, the things that you've become familiar with. But the thing is, if something is not familiar with you, then you're sort of guessing at it if you respond to it and really not knowing. And it's same as with different people with different languages. You know, it goes in many, many different various ways through life.
Mm. And then there's truth in quotation marks. Uh, Truth in quotation marks could suggest that if you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes a truth. And that's what's happening in society. There's a lot of assumed truth. They could have been lies or poorly founded or exaggerations that have become truths. That could even myths could be lies that have become truths. Or now we say that they are myths, but if they're used as stories with a moral purpose, they could be our truths. Like the Garden of Eden, the serpent, the temptation, the fall from the Garden of Eden, original sin. We've been sinners since the beginning of creation. We're born in sin, so we have to get baptized. Wait a minute. What do you think, Joel? Do Jews get baptized?
I don't know, but I know that I've just created a new name for the Darwin's Next Generation space on the Darwin board. It's forevermore to be known as the Aleph Knot.
What?
This is the Aleph Knot space on the Darwin board.
So what is the Aleph Knot, Joe?
The Aleph Knot is something that I don't really fully grasp, but it has something to do with infinite transfinite sets that are cardinally mapped to other sets and converge at zero. I think they go in every direction. I think it's something like what Hiro tries to describe in Buddhism, but I'm not sure. And I don't know, but it was certainly interesting to listen to. I don't pretend to be able, when I went to school, my professors used to say of me, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Like, he doesn't get it right away, but when he gets it, he gets it. So I don't pretend to, as a result of Mike's, I'm sure, very adequate description, to have gotten it yet. But it certainly aroused my curiosity to the point where I will revisit this again. And as I get older, I find I get less and less instantaneously. it increasingly takes time to cogitate in the back of my mind, either overnight or over weeks or over months. But
Maybe
certainly it was totally new concept to me, totally new words, descriptors, and Aleph Not is sounds good to me. That's all I can say.
Aleph Naught is the smallest transfinite cardinal number.
Oh,
Okay.
the
So there
small,
are larger transfinite cardinal numbers. There are different sizes of infinity if you want.
wow.
If you want,
wow.
free.
So what's the next largest? Beta? No. Beta not? Aleph not plus
Can't
one?
really tell you. I could, now I have a couple of times shown to people who are not mathematicians, who did not have any special training. I've demonstrated to them the existence of a transfinite set with a larger cardinality than Aleph Naught, so that they know that there are different sizes of infinity. So this is something that is not terribly deep and not terribly technical, but it takes you a while to to look at it and think about it.
I
And
got a question.
all,
When you get to,
yeah, all of these ideas, as a general rule, you may have to spend time going back to them, looking at them over and over, walking around them, touching them, etc. My experience has been, certainly as a mathematician, there are ideas out there that have taken me years to get to the point where I can say, aha, now I see what is being talked about. And it's not that hard. It's really fairly simple.
Wow.
the thing is, I just came to my mind this word that you're using, Aleph Not. The thing is, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph, right?
Yes.
So what it's saying to me is it's not the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Right?
Well, Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, but if you're doing mathematics and you talk transfinite cardinals, then you find yourself talking about certain infinite cardinals, Aleph Naught, Aleph 1, Aleph 2, and so forth. And then there are others which are outside the set of Alephs. So, that's about as close as I can get to saying
Did they
something
use
that sounds as though it's
did they
relevant to your
use
comment.
the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet is what? Ba? What is it
Beth?
the letter Beth?
Beth or
It
Bet.
is.
Oh, man.
Where's Joel? He's a Hebrew.
Yeah, bait. Olive. When I went to Hebrew school, we used to have a little ditty. We used to, because we were always interested in the girls, so we would say, Olive Bet Gimel Dalet. I got a gal that's really solid. That's that's AB, roughly the equivalent of ABGD in English in the Roman alphabet.
Right.
Aleph, Bet, Gimel,
Gimel,
Gimel.
Gimel, Dalet.
Yeah.
Dalet. I got a girl who's very solid.
Solid.
It's really solid.
I haven't thought of
Philosophical
that for 100
position.
years. Oh, well, this has really been The smallest transfinite cardinal number. Wow. I never imagined, I was going to sleep in today, Hiro. I was actually not going to come, but I'm so glad I did. And thank you for waking up, Mike. It's really been great to hear about all these things. Always wonderful to learn something new early in the morning. That way, I may keep it in my head right through to lunch.
Don't knock yourself out now.
So have you been in Florida all your life, Mike?
Most of it. We moved here about 1950. And
Wow.
I've been here since then.
Wow. And where did you move from, if you don't mind me asking?
My father was in the Navy.
Okay.
We didn't have a there that we moved from. We were all over the place.
I see.
He was a 20-year man in the Navy, moved to Florida, finished out his 20 years at Jacksonville Naval Air Station, and then got into the space industry as a tech.
Oh, neat. Neat. So you're not an official cracker, but you're close.
Yes.
Really nice.
What's a cracker?
Well, I don't know. I'm led to believe that that's how people refer to native Floridians.
Mm.
Yep, that's what they say.
I don't know if that's a pejorative word or not, but I heard it when I was down in Florida. Somebody explained it to me. That's the first place I heard it.
My mother told me you could tell who were the crackers because those were the ones who would be driving in different lanes on the road and would stop their trucks in the middle of the road so they could talk to one another for 10 minutes.
Mm. And David, where are you from originally?
Oh, I'm originally from Michigan, up near where Joel is from.
A Michigander.
Yes, sir. My wife is from Buffalo, so we end up going to Buffalo, taking the Queens Highway into Port Huron, Michigan, where I was born, and I'm at my house. My family's home. Yep.
Buffalo's near Toronto.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very close. A lot of people from Buffalo go to Toronto for many different things, and I think probably the people from Toronto go to Buffalo too for.
Yeah. Or they did before the border was closed.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Is it totally closed now where people can't go back and forth or what?
Yeah. Well, you can only go back and forth for essential business.
Uh-huh.
And you can't drive just generally. People are doing all kinds of crazy things to get to their winter Florida homes.
Uh-huh.
I haven't got that much money to do that, nor would I necessarily want to be far from my healthcare system here. But until this whole thing sorts itself out, which looks like it'll be at least another year.
Wow.
Yeah, at least.
And if they come up with a vaccine, are you willing to take it, or are you hesitant, or you? I guess if you're forced to, you'll take it.
Well, if you're forced to, obviously you'll take it, and hopefully by the time they approve it, people will have enough confidence in it. And because the United States has the majority of the manufacturing, we can have a little bit of time and see what effect it has on 300 million people as a research study. And if you people don't start growing third arms and extra noses on your cheeks and things, then I guess we'll feel more confident to take it.
So they're gonna try it out on
a larger control group, a randomized study group, the United States of America.
I wonder how they're gonna do it. But I heard that when you get it, you'll get symptoms that are kind of like COVID for a day or two.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me.
But it's not considered that you got it. It's just that you might start maybe doing something like I don't know. Like you won't get it, but you get symptoms for it. Maybe the body's reacting to it,
Yeah.
like building up immunity. I don't know. What do you think, David?
What do I think? Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I know that I've had it and my wife's had it. And as a matter of fact, this past week, it's so stupid the way they do things here. The thing is, because she had it, she's taken cancer treatments, and she couldn't go to her oncologist because of the fact that she has to have a recent test for COVID to show that she doesn't have it before she can go to the treatment. So the thing is, I live with her all the time, but it's all right for me to go into their office, okay, to get this piece of paper that I have to bring back to her that she has to take to some place where they can do the test to find out if she has the COVID or not. So the thing is, I think the whole thing is rather stupid, because the thing is, if she still got it, and they allow me to go to pick up the paper, I'm exposing everybody there. But the thing is, it seems to be acceptable, which is part of the whole stupidity of the whole thing. So anyway, the thing is, she went and had the test this past week. And as a matter of fact, they gave her two tests. One was an immediate test, that they are able to check in 3 or 4 hours. And another was a much longer, more complicated test that it took, I don't know, maybe 24 hours or something. And she was negative on both tests, but they also found out that she has all the antibodies too. So, this is just something that's normal, that people that get the COVID, are no longer affected by it for a period of time. What period of time that is, nobody seems to know. So anyway, she's now has to make an appointment to go to the doctor to get her cancer treatment, so that she can be protected from, the cancer. So the whole thing to me is a total mess. And the thing is, the other day I seen something that came out from Johns Hopkins saying that the amount of deaths in the certain age groups were exactly identical in 2020 up until this point as to 2019. So what really impact has COVID really had upon our society? A lot of deaths that they're saying have occurred have been in elderly people with comorbidities. Even some of them been in hospice, and the thing is, if they die, period, and they have COVID, they mark it off as a COVID death rather than something they would have normally died from to begin with. So, to me, this whole thing is rather deceptive, to say the least.
But couldn't the COVID, along with the others that end up being comorbidities, couldn't the COVID have triggered the others to get worse?
Well, I believe that's really totally possible and probably does happen, you know. But the idea that people are just dying from the COVID, which is what's presented, is totally false. Because the thing is, you have to have something else that's going to be. Yeah, shouldn't say you have to, because there's been cases that I understand that people have actually gotten COVID and died from. But the thing is, the news media, on the other hand, have taken therapies and pushed them aside that have been known to be effective. As a matter of fact, the hydroxychloroquine, they won't even let people take in some places because they control it so much, but yet it's been demonstrated through its use, and also by many doctors that even use it, that it actually overcomes, the COVID. And there's many other therapies too that are not approved by the FDA here, because I hate to say this, but what they really want to do is have a lot of people die from it, so they can build their numbers up so that they can control the population. And I think it's a catastrophe, the things that are happening, because they don't have the amount. You don't know the amount of people that are dying from, overdoses and different things caused by this thing. And the amount of businesses that are going out of business is tremendous. The only people that are really making money are Walmart and Amazon and these large corporations that exist. So I think the whole thing is a sham deal for us to be turned into a communist type country, which is what the globalists want us to do. And the only thing is, I don't think people are prepared at all for it. So, especially up there in Canada, I hear that they're really pushing for lockdown up there, and that things are sort of really, really bad, getting worse. I don't know. Sort of like in New York State, we have the same thing there in California.
Well, we do have a lockdown here, and I'm glad of it. So my belief is different than your belief, David.
Yeah, I understand that.
My belief is that this virus is real, and it is deadly, especially to older people whose immune systems are less robust than younger people. And I believe that I don't want to get this disease, whether I recover from it or not. I believe that we don't know what the effects are on people's organs if they get the disease and recover from it. We don't know that yet. And since that is an unknown, I want to avoid being one of the experimenters that get it and will find out in 5, 10, 20 years, 6 months, whether it's harmful or not. So as a result of that, I'm adopting a paranoid attitude, and I stay away from crowds. And I'm glad that our government is enforcing regulations. I wear a mask even when I walk out of my apartment building because it's a rule in our apartment building. It's a law, if you will, that our apartment building is put into place that anyone entering the building must have their face covered. And it's a law that anyone going into any of the retail stores has to have a face covering. And not everybody wants to adhere to that law, and they should be fined or otherwise dealt with if they don't comply, just like when I run a red light or if I park where I'm not supposed to be parked. The problem is that the consequences of someone not following that law are not only on themselves, but on people that they may breathe around. And that's a very, very serious thing. So if my belief is mistaken, I've inconvenienced myself greatly. But if my belief is correct, I may have prevented myself from dying prematurely. So I'm making that decision on that kind of belief. But you may be, having survived it according to your beliefs, you may feel more confident because you've already been through it, and you've got immune bodies in your system or your wife's system that I just don't have. So that's where we are in Canada. Our infection rate is rising rapidly, but per capita, it's still about half of what it is in the United States. But it looks like our Thanksgiving was earlier than yours. And now we're having a huge spike in infection rates in places that were previously not infected. So it looks like we're going to be on a par with the United States. In fact, one of our provinces is now reporting almost double the US infection rate, Saskatchewan. So yeah, it's a hairy time. I've never lived through anything like this. I was in Florida when this was first announced, and we got a letter from our out-of-country insurance carrier that said, you have 10 days to be back in Canada or you're on your own. So we left. And in retrospect, I'm glad of it. We got into Canada, just before the most serious effects started last March. And I went to Walmart when we first got back. We weren't really supposed to, but we did anyway to get some groceries and things like that. And I remember remarking that there was one lady there. She was an Asian lady, and she had gloves on and a mask on. And she was the only one in the whole supermarket. And I said to Neonita, I said, you know what? In 6 months, everybody's going to be doing that. And I was prophetic. Now you can't even get into the supermarket without wearing a mask.
Well, it's the same way it is here.
David, it sounds as though you are saying you have seen reports some sort of medically compiled reports saying these coronavirus deaths are not really occurring.
No, I didn't say that. I don't mean to bring that, you know, because I think that coronavirus is something that's very real, especially after experiencing it. And I can understand how it will kill people too, especially after experiencing it, you know. But the thing is, you know, you might take, for example, the flu. The flu, they saying this year right now, there's nowhere near as many cases as they normally get. And therefore, they don't have nowhere near as many deaths as from the flu. Because the thing is, there people die every year from different things, from even different types of flu. So, you know, what they're saying to me is that, you know, it's something, and that they don't deny that some of the deaths are caused from, you know, the coronavirus in this John Hopkins study, but that, you know, the thing is they're attributing far more to deaths to things that people would have died from anyway, you know, and I believe that's probably true. That's just my opinion, you know.
So
Um,
if you're
I'm not quite sure what
suggesting,
you're saying at the end.
are
what's
you
that?
are you suggesting that the John Hopkins study saying that since there's less flus in this time period compared to last year, that maybe they're counting deaths by this flu as coronavirus deaths?
No,
Maybe.
the thing is, number one, I didn't hear the flu thing as far as people dying from the flu being less this year than last year. I did not hear that reference to John Hopkins study. The John Hopkins study that I referenced to, or that I actually heard about, which you might say it's hearsay, is fiction until you've actually read it and understand the author who actually presents it. You know, but there was a comment saying that you know, the amount of people that actually died in 2020 was not that much different from the year before in 2019 in respect to deaths. But the only thing is they've allowed, the thing is, one thing that is not preferenced enough is the fact that a hospital, they get paid X amount of dollars if they have a coronavirus death from the government. So the thing is, there's an incentive for the hospitals, number one, to claim, especially if somebody has coronavirus, you know, that they died from it, because it's an incentive for the hospital to make money. And to me, these incentives like this should not exist at all. They should be, you know, as far as I'm concerned, if somebody dies and they have coronavirus and they have something else wrong with them, it should be noted accordingly. Because the thing is, the amount of children, you know, that actually get the coronavirus and it has any implication to, I mean, they have any kind of symptoms is very few. So, you know, like here in Florida, which probably in Canada, and I know in New York and California is not the same, where kids actually go to school here. And to me, there has not been any kind of a problem with the children being, you know, with other children and with adults being their teachers and so on and so forth. I have not heard that it has been any kind of an issue in the state of Florida. But up in New York and also in California, they will not allow the you know, in classroom teaching go on like they are here. And you know, to me, I think it's more of a thing of the unions taking and wanting to take and control this. As a matter of fact, I know it is, you know, to make a political statement out of what this coronavirus is actually all about. So it's hurting the children by not having that one-on-one relationship and learning. I mean, there's all kinds of statistical information out there regarding that. So, you know, the thing is, it all depends on what side a person wants to take and look at this. Are they fearful for themselves? Do other people have to take and look out for you? Or are you looking out for your own self? And to me, I'm an individualist, so I like to take and look out for myself, knowing that there's other things there. You know, and I see that all the time, especially being an Uber driver on the road. You know, there are people that just want you to move out of their way. You know, they could care less about what they do, but usually these people end up getting into an accident or losing their driver's license or whatever the way they drive. But we live in a society where people, for some reason, have been taught that it's other people's responsibility to look out for me, and I don't have to look out for me at all. You know, and I think that's totally wrong. I think that it's up to each individual to be responsible and make the decisions on their own, because there are therapies for the coronavirus. To ignore that is, I think, rather ignorant, you know. And the thing is, there are things that can be done even with vitamins that can be taken for people to take and help themselves, you know, to not get this coronavirus. But it's up to the individual. I don't think it should be legislated by government as to what we have to do for other people in their opinions without looking at the true scientific data and also the solutions as well.
But David, can although taking zinc and vitamin D3 and all that, isn't that couldn't that be considered just to reinforce your immune system? You could be the healthiest person in the world, but you could still catch the virus. So it doesn't really prevent. It just helps build up the immune system so that you can overcome it, right?
Yes,
Like
absolutely. I mean, but
so,
that's an
so it's not
individual
a
choice if they
it's
wanted.
not a preventive matter. It is so the prevention is actually in the wearing of the mask and social distancing and washing hands and things like that.
Well, the only thing is that you have to break all that stuff down too, because a lot of people, and there's a lot of data out there too, that the masks really don't do anything because these.
Actually, yeah, they say that the virus is so small it could go through the mask, but
Right,
actually the virus has normally travels in the vapor and the
right.
or droplets, and those are a lot bigger, so they could be blocked. So so they're suspecting now that the masks do have some protection. It can protect you, like if somebody is talking at you, and it could protect you a bit. But it's better than nothing.
David, could I one of your facts doesn't extend into my realm of belief as a fact. So we may have a different understanding of things, and I'm not as close to the situation in the United States, but because I have a little bit of knowledge of accounting, I think I have a little understanding of that. You made the point that the reporting of COVID deaths may be overstated because hospitals get payments for the number of COVID deaths that occur, so that they're incentivized to create, the death certificates, which is what people get when somebody dies in Canada. I'm sure you have the same situation in Florida. Every civilized society has some process that determines a death and a cause of death. But on what documentation or fact or canceled check, or where is there an accounting record that would allow me to take your statement, which I take to be your belief, and incorporate it into my mindset as a fact? Because I believe that that's a mistaken understanding. So
Well, the thing is, as far as I'm
there,
concerned, I can't do that, Joel, for you or for anybody. It's up to each individual to search out the facts that they believe based on their own facts or beliefs or whatever. And I'm not trying to convince anybody that what I believe is true or not.
no,
But
but
I do know,
I'm trying to point out to you that there is an external objective, like the Controller General of Florida Revenues would report that we have paid these hospitals $100 per capita, $1,000 per capita for every, like the bounty on COVID deaths. And I honestly don't believe that exists. And I don't think the federal government does that either. Now, there may be a payment for people in hospital who per diem for every day they're cared for. There may even be a fee for handling the bodies after people die. But I find it very, very incredible that there would be a payment to a healthcare institution based on a cause of death.
I mean,
But that's
yeah,
something that you believe, and you have built a structure around that. And all I'm trying to point out to you is that that one belief that you are calling a fact, you may be operating on a mistaken belief. But I may be also. Like
right.
everything you say may be absolutely true, but it's one of those things that we, as two people of goodwill and truth seeking, might be able to verify. And we could come back and say, look, I looked it up on the internet, and yes, Florida pays $1,000 to every institution that has a COVID death in its doors. And I may find out that the Canadian government, because most of the deaths are occurring in seniors' homes here, a lot of them, at least in the first phase, that the federal government or the provincial governments pay to the long-term care homes every person that dies in their care with COVID. So the doctors are being pressured to put down cause of death, COVID, instead of heart attack. But the statistics that I believe have been published by responsible health organizations indicate that COVID deaths are in excess of the normal death rates. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I don't know if John Hopkins or any of the other organizations are incentivized to report these things as well, but I simply don't think that's correct.
Well, that's what you believe, and the thing is, like myself, I believe something different, not only based on that, but one thing that, maybe you can answer this because you seem to have a lot of understanding of accountability, is back in March.
I am a retired CPA.
Okay.
So I think I have a little bit, and I'm what's called a retired life member in Canada.
Right. Okay. But the thing is, back in March, the thing is, I remember I thought to myself, maybe I had COVID or something. So I went and had myself tested. And the thing is, there was absolutely no charge for that test. So my question is, I understand that the federal government is actually paying, for all this testing and stuff to be done. So if that be the case, why would these hospitals and all these other different places not want to take and provide as many tests as possible? Because the thing is, they're reaping the reward of the benefit of getting compensated by the federal government. What that fee they're paying is, I have no idea what it is, but I know that somebody is paying this in the background. I don't think it's George Soros coming up and saying, hey, we're going to pay for this because this is something that's bad on society. This has to be paid by the federal government somehow. So the thing is, to me, I'm not an accountant. I don't know where it comes from, but to me, just common sense tells me that somebody's being compensated for this. And I believe if you follow the paper trail or the money trail, you would find that the federal government is the one that is actually dishing out the money for all these tests and these different things of that nature. Now, if they get paid once they get into the hospital, to me, it's just hearsay, it's rumor, but I've heard it in several different directions and ways. And I know that doctors have stood up and said that they have a cure for this in the form of hydroxychloroquine. But immediately when that was mentioned and the support from these doctors that were supporting it, everything that they said was taken down off the internet, taken down off of the media, and the opposite was pushed out. So to me, it looks like that's all to me, it's propaganda, because the thing is, nothing is being done. And even when my wife was in the hospital, they gave her the same thing that they gave President Trump, and she got better and jumped out of this thing really rather quickly. So I'm going by what I see actually happening, not by what I'm hearing the propaganda news media push out, because to me, I think there's far more propaganda out there than people have any idea of realizing to create their own accountability. And I don't go by that. I go by what exists. I'm an existence person to see and to understand what I know actually is function that's taking place in society.
David, can you clarify again? Is it that they're incentivized for death or for cases, or are they just getting money to just give the test?
Well, they're probably getting money to give the test. I mean, the thing is, the federal government, I think they were behind the idea of doing tests. At first, they didn't have any tests that they could perform. You know, it took them a while because a lot of the tests that they did, I have nurses and stuff that I picked up. And I remember one time here a couple of months ago, I picked up this nurse. And the thing is, she was telling me at Florida Hospital or at Advent Health here, they went through and tested every single person at Florida Advent Health. And they sent it off to the place where they take and they diagnose all these tests and everything, and they all came back, and when they came back they were flawed. So the thing is, they had to disregard all these tests, and things like this have been happening regularly. The thing is, who is paying for this? Somebody is paying for this, and I don't believe it's a hospital, I believe it's the government. So the thing is, when these things happen like this, you know, you have to take and look at, you know, what's really going on with this and where's the
Well,
money coming from.
don't you think that the benefits of over testing is far better than no testing at all? Because if you don't test or not test enough, then you're not capturing who could be, like, if everybody got tested once a week, then you'd catch asymptomatic people more, and then you could quarantine them, or just it would allow
As
people
far
to
as
be.
I'm concerned, Jairo, the mindset of this whole thing is ridiculous because of the fact that COVID is nothing more than a type of a flu, period. I mean, that's what COVID is. I mean, there's
It's a,
several different COVID.
it's an
SARS is
asymptomatic flu.
what?
Asymptomatic flu means that you don't know if you've got it, and so you could be spreading it. That's what makes it dangerous
Well,
compared
the
to
thing is,
other
that's
flu.
true with the flu. So the thing is,
No, if you get the flu, you know you're sick, and so you stay at home. But with this one, you could be sick and be spreading it. Like
well, you can have the flu and spread it too.
you could be spreading it right now, couldn't you? Like without
Right.
wearing a
That's
mask.
what I'm saying. But the thing is, how far is a person's paranoia going to go with this? You're going to stop living?
No, but it's not paranoia.
It is paranoia.
It's to reduce the spread. It's a measure that's worked in many countries in Asia, in like New Zealand, and a lot of countries that locked down quick, like South Korea. They did it immediately at the same time that the US got their cases.
Yeah, but the
South
thing is,
Korea
South Korea,
locked up.
even now, the thing is that they're having spikes. You know, this whole thing is, are you going to take and live by what
They
other
have
people tell
spikes
you
when
to scare
they
you, or
stop
are you going to
the
take and
lockdown.
examine this stuff? You know, I mean, that's the way I look at it. Because the thing is, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck in your home in a room for the rest of your life. You know, it's up to you. I mean, I choose not to do that. Just like myself, I'm an Uber driver. I pick up people every day and take them to the doctor. So the thing is, my exposure is there every single day for this COVID. Am I worried about it? No, I'm not, because the thing is, if I die, I die. That's it. You know, I don't look at life as, you know, and, you know, these people need a service. You know, these
But
people may need get
the
cancer.
objective is
They may have.
not yourself, it's others that could die from it. So if you cut your if you stop wearing the mask, you could spread it to others that could die. What do
Well,
you
I
think
wear a
about that?
mask. I wear a mask every place they tell you to. I have to wear a mask when I drive Uber, when I drive Lyft. Okay, when I go into a grocery store, I wear a
So
mask. I mean, I don't
is
deny
that
that.
something that you go along with, to wear a mask, or is that an imposition on, and is that preventing ruining your freedoms, or is that something evil, or what?
I don't look at it as evil. I look at it as a regulation that's required right now in order to live and operate in this world. I mean, that's what it is. Do
Like
I take
traffic
it when I
rules?
walk outside and walk my dog? Do I wear a mask? No, I don't do that. When I'm inside my house, do I wear a mask? No, I don't do that. But the thing is, they're wanting in the state of California, you know, it's mandatory. Some places it's already mandatory that you wear, even if you're driving in a car and you're the only one that's ever driven in that car, that you wear a mask. I mean, these things are getting ridiculous. And the thing is, I do it. I wear a mask wherever it's legislated, but I don't believe in it. No, I don't. You know, if that's your point. And the thing is, because it's sort of like the cold, you're going to get the cold. Some people get it depending upon their exposure and the amount of people that they've come in contact with. You know, it happens. So, you know,
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to bid you goodbye.
yeah, me too. I'm leaving too. So we'll see you.
Okay,
Hey, Mike,
thank
it's good to
you,
see you. I haven't
Mike.
seen you in a while.
Thank you, David.
Okay. We'll see y'all next time. Take it easy,
Good.
Ira.
Next time, we've
Good seeing
discovered
you. And
the truth that will set you free.
Yeah, what is that?
Mathematics.
enchain you.
Mathematics.
What if truth enchains you?
Oh, that's scary. Now he's really getting philosophical. It was very good to meet you, Mike. I certainly hope I see you again, and I'd love to play a game of Darwin with you, because as a mathematician, that's a few mathematicians have told me it's something called dynamic computational mathematics, which I don't even know if it exists. I couldn't understand what they were talking about, but they said there is no way that they can give me a formula that will give me my probability of winning given different strategies.
Well, one of the things you learn to do as a fiction writer or a mathematician is to make up on the spur impressive terms and toss them out casually.
So the Aleph knot.
Yes.
Aleph knot is the smallest transfinite cardinal number.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to keep that in mind because that was impressive big time.
Yes, and just toss that out at a cocktail party
Yeah.
as though, well, everyone knows this. And see how many egos you can crush.
Toss it out at a philosophical meeting on Zoom.
Well, that's where I'm going right now. The Epicureans are meeting in Minnesota. So I have to go to my Epicurean meeting. I'm trying to arrange a tournament between the various branches of philosophy to see which one will win at Darwin.
I'll have Darwin philosophical teams.
Yes, exactly. Exactly the goal. So the Epicureans versus the Stoics versus the mathematicians versus whoever else we can get to play. But so far, here's something that I have observed, which surprised me. I also go to a number of autistic groups because they run a group out of Yale, and I wanted to see if they were able to play Darwin, because I understand there's some autistic people that are like chess geniuses, even though they have deficiencies neurologically in other ways. And they seem to play the game without any issue. And they're very good at it, just intuitively. So what goes on in the mind of an autistic person? And the only other person that I've met is a guy in Italy who's a physicist and a philosopher, and he just took to the game like you wouldn't believe. Only time in 5 years I found anybody who played it as if he had already read the rules and yet he'd never seen the game before. Anyway, guys, have a great weekend. And
Mike will take to Darwin and be the Orlando's top player.
Possibly, I'd be very curious to see if that's true, if he's willing to try. It takes about 5 minutes to learn, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And it's geometric.
Okay.
Maybe another time.
Joel.
Sorry?
Good meeting you.
Very good to meet you as well.
Yes, it was wonderful to have Mike finally.
We'll see what happens.
Have a good week, everyone.
You too.
Stay safe.
Yes.
And wear your masks.
Right.